Welcome back to Movies TV Man. You of course can follow me on Twitter at Movies TV Man, and welcome to Sunday's edition of the DCEU Daily. Yes, we're in a different place today. We're still on the same property, but we're on one of my balconies, one of my many balconies outside, and yes, that is a Christmas tree. It's been up there since October. I start early because I love the time of the year. So yes, Zack Snyder is the blueprint. How did that hashtag start? Yes, it did trend on Twitter, and it's fantastic. Isn't it ironic how it started though? It started from an MCU director. Now I want you to think about this. Do you remember when Man of Steel was released and we had all the Avengers kind of memes and the Man of Steel memes, and we were both getting at each other, DCEU fans and MCU fans, through these memes, talking about destruction and non-destruction, blah, blah, blah. Isn't it interesting? After the MCU fans have spent so much time telling us that Zack Snyder's a bad director and Man of Steel's a bad movie because of all of that destruction, and some people probably dying and being collateral damage, as would happen in reality, Chloe Zhao, their own director of one of, well, their latest films, is saying that Zack Snyder is the blueprint, that she was inspired by his Man of Steel movie to make a similar movie. And that's what it is. That's what's interesting about Chloe and Eternals. Because if you take the Eternals out of the MCU, it's a really good film. It's a good film in its own right. But a lot of MCU stans don't like it. They don't like it because it's different. And you know who else doesn't like it? Top critics. Because top critics don't like good films. No. That's why they hate Snyder's films, or they hated Man of Steel and BVS. Look at the films top critics have verified fresh this year. Think about it. There's the recent one with Ryan Reynolds, Free Guy. A load of crap. Sorry, but it is. It's okay, it's fun. But it's literally the cameos and Easter eggs movie, right? That cringy moment with Captain America's shield, or the Avengers music. It's shit. Jungle Cruise. I'm not going to call anything The Rock does shit, but let's be honest. Let's be honest. And these are the things that audiences are making very successful. Why? Because top critics told the audiences it's okay. And these droid-like fucking audiences go and watch whatever top critics tell them to watch. Ironically, Man of Steel made just under 700 million, Batman vs Superman around 900 million, The Suicide Squad just under 800 million, the first one, Wonder Woman, just under 800 million. Zack Snyder's Justice League is of course one of the most successful films on streaming of all time. So what do we do now, Warner Brothers? Because the auteur is all of a sudden fashionable. Feig's used an auteur because he knows there's a paradigm shift towards auteurs. Denis Villeneuve's Dune is a consequence of what Snyder did, a positive consequence of what Snyder did. So what do we do next, Warner Brothers? You forced the man away. You had another civil war with him during him trying to put his Snyder Cut movie together, and now he's gone, maybe for good. But all of a sudden, everybody loves Zack Snyder. What are you going to do now? We've got a Flashpoint movie coming. What does that Flashpoint movie mean? What does it do? Does it delete the Snyderverse? If it does, Warner Brothers, you're in big, big trouble, because a lot of people want him to be making DC movies again. Whether he wants to or not, that's down to him. He's very busy with Rebel Moon right now. So what happens next, Warner Brothers? Because the thing's turned around on its arse, hasn't it? We've got a Marvel director making a Marvel movie inspired by Zack Snyder's DC movies. Mentioning, let's be honest, his Superman. That's the Superman she's mentioning in that film. And as I say, there's this kind of disparity. I mean, do you remember the hate Zack got for Man of Steel, but especially BVS? Chloe's Eternals is getting the same hate. But why? Is it that bad a movie? Was BVS a bad movie? No. Is Eternals a bad movie? No. But it dared to be different. Now, we discussed this the other day, but I'm going at this a different angle. Because I think we can bring Eternals into the conversation. Because I think it's important to do so. Now, all of a sudden, you've got people openly saying that Zack Snyder did a great job with his DCEU. That they were inspired by his Superman movie and by his BVS movie. So what happens next? Because this is the problem now. What happens next? Because the opinion has turned around. What do we do now? Do we forget Zack Snyder, the man who actually pioneered the DCEU, partly with, obviously, Christopher Nolan and David Goyer? They were the first creative hands to touch the DCEU. That's a fact. So what do we do now? Forget him? Forget that pioneering style that he made? He made a movie you could touch, but it still had that fantasy element. I'm talking about Man of Steel. I'm talking about Batman vs Superman. I'm talking about the Snyder Cut. Because that's what Denis Villeneuve's Dune movie actually is. That's what Chloe Zhao's Eternals is. I mean, let's look at Batman vs Superman and Eternals and even Zack Snyder's Watchmen. They're deconstruction movies. Now, to be honest, right, Watchmen they were always deconstructive characters. They weren't exactly pure heroes. They were from a different kind of alternate world. So I think it's kind of unfair to compare the MCU's Eternals or Man of Steel or BVS to that film. Because obviously the DCEU is set. Now, I don't know what Earth it's set anymore. I don't know if Snyder's DCEU is Earth 1 or Earth 500. Nobody knows at this point. They're going to have to clarify everything, you know, when we go from Flashpoint onwards. Because whatever they've done now, they can't go back and change it. Well, actually, they can. Because the Flash movie is not released till November. So with Chloe's comments, with Denis Villeneuve's movie doing well on the back of what Zack did with the Snyder Cut. The Snyder Cut is the movie that made the auteur fashionable. Because they've never really been fashionable. Think about it. How many people have bought it? You know, embraced it. These were people who hated Snyder with Man of Steel and Batman vs Superman. But still, they came in. And they did it. He did it. And it was a big fight to release the Snyder Cut. It was a big fight. Think about it this way. It was a big fight to open people's eyes to the auteur director. Think about that for a minute. We had to fight for the Snyder Cut to open people's eyes that auteurs are the best directors out there because they're people with a vision. And they just want to express that vision in their films. And normally, you know, it ends up pretty well. I mean, but let's look, there's kind of a disparity here because obviously, do we make films for the mainstream audience? Do we make films for people who appreciate the auteur? That is, of course, a problem. Of course, no one says that you just have to make auteur movies, but we've had so many, you know, mainstream MCU movies now that I think people have grown tired of them. Now, you could argue, if people have grown tired of them, why are so many people rejecting the Eternals? Why is the box office not as strong as Shang-Chi and Black Widow? Because that's simple. You've got people, you know, Kevin Feige's got people used to the MCU. So if you do like an easy, something you don't have to think about MCU movie, and then you give people a deconstructive movie like Eternals, what's going to happen? People are going to reject the in-depth movie like Eternals because they just want to eat their popcorn, drink their cola, chew their gum before it runs out of flavour and watch that movie. They don't want Chloe Zhao's Eternals. The differences between the DCEU and the MCU and two auteur movies launched the DCEU. Now, at the MCU, for a very long time now, there's been no auteur movies. They're all movies made by a committee. A one-person committee, Kevin Feige. He pulls the strings. And he thought he could do the same with Chloe Zhou and Eternals. He wanted to show, he wanted the optics of bringing in an auteur and doing something different so people could see, you know, because he's jumping off the back of the Snyder Cut, of course he is. Not just the movie's release, but the tag, the hashtag release the Snyder Cut. He can see its popularity. He can see Zack's popularity. He could never work with someone like Zack because Zack's a free spirit that wants to do his own thing. So he wanted to create an illusion of that type of film. Now, Chloe, I would say, got to make 75% of the movie that she wanted to make. But the gags, the overstuffedness, that's fake. I've mentioned that before. It's obvious. You can't have an auteur without letting her run free. I've heard idiots say, oh, the reason the box office isn't as huge as the other films, the reason critics don't like it, is because she's a woman. What's utter bollocks? Is that what you're going to say? Oh, it's because it was made by a girl. Is that your nuance? Is that your logic? Is that your narrative? I've just explained why some people are rejecting this film. Because they're bred on Rotten Tomatoes and top critics who wouldn't know a great movie, a great story, a great piece of artwork if it fell over them and said, yo dude, give me 5. We have critics today that have no business being critics, who know jack shit about the process of making a movie and what works and what doesn't. I was talking to Paul Shurey, who now writes for Screen Rant. I like Paul. I could talk to him about movies all day. And I think I got the impression he didn't really like the movie. And I kind of explained to him, this is the problem, isn't it? When you get people used to the chewing gum that runs out of flavour quickly and you give them something, maybe a chewing gum with an aftertaste, they don't like it because they've been used to the sweet taste. And he replied to me and said it needed more of that sweet gum. And there lies the problem. Again, I have no problem with Paul. Out of all the people who talk about films, on a high profile level, I like Paul. As I say, I could talk to Paul all day. And I've spoken to Paul quite a lot on Twitter. Great guy. But in a way, he's an example of the kind of journalists talking about movies today. And he talks about old stuff. And I've seen his YouTube before, and he appreciates older movies from my generation. He obviously comes from the same generation, maybe slightly younger than me. But the problem is the mentality. Paul kind of showed me that, maybe he's not interested in the deeper movies. But it's interesting because I think Paul's a fan of Zack Snyder's movies. So that's interesting. Deeper movies, made more realistically, with great CG and still have this escapism element of them. So it's interesting. I think what he was getting at was, look, the MCU is this, it's not that. And there lies the problem. You can't turn the MCU into the Snyderverse. Now, Feige isn't trying to do that. He's a trickster. He's a magician. I'm not saying this to be horrible because he's very talented at what he does. He wanted to create the illusion of doing something like that to bring the same fans in. And I've seen Snyder fans saying, oh my God, this is like Watchmen. Now, I don't think it is. I don't think it is the masterpiece that Snyder did with MOS, BVS, the Snyder Cut. And Rebel Moon is going to be his best work, I think. I can't wait to see Rebel Moon. But the future is the auteur director. We can see it now. We can see the money June's making. And slowly but surely people are losing interest in the MCU. Yes, the MCU at this point in the next year or so will still make money. Spider-Man No Way Home is so anticipated, but not because of what Feige's built up within the MCU, because of what they did at Sony originally with Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield. That's the only reason people are interested. Nobody gives a shit with them crossing over with Tom Holland. It's about those actors because people love those films and they did well. They're people's perception of what Spider-Man should be on the big screen in live action. That's why people are excited. But it's still going to be a film, I think, that will resonate for sure, but it's not a Dune. It's not a BVS, it's not an MOS, neither does it have to be. And whether the film lasts or not, and I think Spider-Man No Way Home is an interesting film, because this is the new evolution of where they're going with superheroes, where it's crossovers now, it's multiverses now, isn't it? Because they've tired out everything else. So now we're here. What I want to know about Spider-Man No Way Home when I go and see it is it a good film? And people are just going to cheer and clap when they see Andy and Toby, and that's fine, I understand that. Standing with Tom, I get it. But is this the film that everyone wants it to be? It's interesting. Apparently this film is just under 3 hours. We're going there with superhero films now as well. But what's interesting about superhero films, they have the potential to be made by auteurs. They're crying out to be made by auteurs. To be 3 hours long with the best CGI, with the best music by Zimmer or Junkie XL, that type of composer. They are crying out for that type of thing. And again, I expect another immersive comic book movie from Matt Reeves' The Batman. So we're going there. And I think slowly but surely people are going to get pissed off and fed up of the 2 hour, 20-minute superhero film that does nothing. That tickles them under the chin. For now they still want that and are excited about it. But sooner or later these auteur movies will be cinema. This is good news for the industry because at least we can see entertaining, immersive, cinematic classics. So I think Chloe Zhao pretty much saying Zack Snyder's the blueprint, and I don't know if they were her exact words, but you know, the Snyder fans got that sentence from somewhere, so I assume she did. Zack Snyder is the blueprint. You can make superhero movies any way. It doesn't have to be the way Snyder does it or Feige does it. The point is now people are going back to Man of Steel. People are going back to Batman versus Superman, and they're seeing something so special that lasts, that has depth, that's trying to say something really important in superhero movies. We spoke the other day about Man of Steel and talking, you know, the environmental commentary Man of Steel makes via Krypton and the, you know, the world engine trying to make Earth into Krypton. So it's there. Batman versus Superman really does represent Trump's America in a lot of ways. We see the Senate building being blown up. We see the people manipulated by Trump in real life going to that building, and people died, and you know, people were injured. It's like connected. Snyder touched on something with BVS, and he touched on something again with MOS. These are films that people are starting to realise, you know, fucking what, we need more directors like this making films like this. People are slowly moving away from the, oh, it tickled me under the chin, oh, isn't that good, oh yes, Spider-Man's in that film and it's going to be in that film. All of a sudden, this could kibosh the plans of Sony's Spider-Man Cinematic Extended Universe. Why? Because we may be beyond that now. You know, crossovers and Easter eggs, which are great. I wouldn't mind that in the DCEU, and Snyder was doing that anyway, let's be honest. And who knows what stuff he would have done in the future. But the question now is, it's over to you, Warner Brothers. All of a sudden, Zack Snyder is popular. The film auteur is the thing now. So what happens? Will you let him finish off what he wanted to finish off? Does he want to do it now after the way you treated him and the way you both treated each other and really brought the argument to the public, you know, conception, which I thought was wrong? But I love his DC movies and I want to see Justice League 2 and Justice League 3, but I don't think the guy walks on water, and that's okay, because nobody does. Well, apparently there was this one guy. Don't know, I never met him before, but anyway, just a rumour. Lots of rumours on the internet anyway, right? But the point being, I mean, it's funny for us who knew Snyder was making something fucking special, and now to see everyone, the apologists, come out. Oh, actually, Zack Snyder is good. And I knew this would happen. I warned you this would happen, didn't I? When we were building up towards the release of the Snyder Cut, I told you it was going to be the most successful streaming event of all time. It was. I saw the fucking figures. Not many people have. I have the privilege of seeing them. I got someone to show them to me. And they're everything the Snyder fans and more think they are. Right, that's point one. And I said to you, because of Zack talking about what happened to him in his personal life with his daughter, with Deb, with him being his working partner, and once people saw the Snyder Cut, people would start changing their minds. It was like Eric Cantona, the footballer, who kung fu kicked a football supporter for saying something about his wife, and everyone wanted his guts for garters. But then he came back. And it's a similar story to Snyder. Then he came back for Manchester United in October. He scored for us. He literally took us kicking and screaming to winning the FA Cup and the Premier League. If you don't understand football, I'm sorry. It's a similar situation. All of a sudden, everyone loved Cantona. He did another season, then retired and walked into the sunset and never played football on an elite level again. It's a great story, and I'm proud to have experienced it. And I'm even more proud to experience my DC, the IP that I fucking love, having this beautiful story of Zack Snyder. It's Zack Snyder that's knocked the door down. It's Zack Snyder that's affected people to actually appreciate the fact that Matt Reeves and Auteur is doing a Batman movie, and to go and watch Denis Villeneuve's Dune, even though that in America they can sit at home and watch it on HBO Max. That's actually brilliant. So we are now in the era of the Auteur. We've gone past, there's an Easter egg there. We've gone past that. Or we're getting past it at least. Dune and the Snyder Cut have changed everything. And the Batman will change everything again. This opens the door for more auteurs doing superhero movies, comic book movies. And Feige's going to see this. But again, the problem Feige's got at Marvel is people don't want it at the moment. They're rejecting. It's interesting. I mean, I can understand the mainstream audience saying this was a bit boring. I don't find it boring. It's like they said that about BVS, that it's a boring movie. It's actually not a boring movie. It's a compelling movie. But to these kids who go there for different reasons, they don't want to see that type of movie. So Feige's not yet going to embrace that. It's obvious. He'll have to bend the knee, and because he's got Chapek. I mean, rumours now that him and Chapek are butting heads with the direction that Feige wants to go in. With all the inclusion as well he wants to bring in. It's interesting. What happens there? I've always had concerns about Feige. Maybe it's time for Kevin to walk away from that dying franchise. And although the money's still coming in, we can tell it's at the end now, isn't it? And the DCEU is still at its beginning. It's had its problems, but it's also had some amazing movies. Snyder's movies, that Suicide Squad movie, whoever was responsible for it, Wonder Woman, whoever was responsible for it, the Snyder Cut, Aquaman's a great movie, Shazam's a great movie for the family, the Joker movie, which is not part of the DCEU, of course, and who knows what else they're going to spin off that to. So I think the energy is with the DCEU, and I think nothing would be better than Warner Brothers announcing that they're allowing Zack Snyder, when he's ready, and he's not going to be ready anytime soon, to finish off his Justice League movies. I think people would be down for that, even the non-Snyder stans. And I think it's the right time to do it, because as I say, people are now have opened their eyes to the Auteur. The Auteur can take us through a doorway and give us the escapism we desire. They have a plan, they have a vision for a movie. But when you make a movie through committee or via Kevin Feige, who is the committee, you don't get something very special. You get something like Iron Man, which is okay. You get something like Iron Man 2, which is terrible. You get something like The Incredible Hulk, which is actually okay. The first 4 movie, which is okay. But these are not classic films. I've mentioned a few films that I wouldn't call classic movies. They're just a domino that knock one door down and open another. And that's what the MCU is. And if that's what you enjoy, good luck to you. And so we are at a perfect time to bring back Snyder, because now people are appreciating the movie Auteur. And seeing Feige actually allowing an Auteur to direct a movie and to come out and say, I'm inspired by Snyder's Superman. And you can tell, because one of her characters pretty much, the imagery for that character is dead on for Man of Steel, for the Superman in Man of Steel, even with the heat vision. So it's just interesting that Snyder pioneered the change. And from Snyder, we went to Villeneuve, then to Matt Reeves. And hopefully we get more auteurs in the DCEU As I say, I can't see more auteurs in the MCU for now, but at least by Feige doing that and giving an auteur like Chloe a chance, it shows that he understands. Because if he's doing something, that means he understands it's changing. Things are changing. And auteurs are the ones that people want to see. They want to see their movies. Because, as I say, their movies are very immersive. They're very personal to the viewer. And it's like when we were kids watching these films like Star Wars, RoboCop and all that. They were immersive experiences made by directors who took you through a doorway. Running Man, Total Recall, about futures we couldn't imagine. And I think the film auteur can take us back to those days. Now, there is still another door to kick down, and that's the extreme left in the entertainment industry. Once we can get rid of them, once Hollywood understand that they're just inmates who have escaped from Arkham Asylum, then we can enjoy our entertainment again. That doesn't mean we can't have representation and inclusion. It just means representation and inclusion shouldn't be the marketing for your movie. Your movie should be the marketing. So it was very interesting to see that hashtag trending. Zack Snyder is the blueprint, and he is the blueprint. You go back and watch Batman vs Superman and Man of Steel, and to think that we can remember the reaction to those films. That's the thing, the hatred. They were treating Zack like the Antichrist, for fuck's sake. We all remember it. That can't be buried. But it also isn't good for us or good for anyone, even the haters, for us to hold a grudge against them. This should be a moment of celebration where people appreciate what Zack was trying to do. And I think that's brilliant. And I think if this leads to more comic book movies, movies in general, made by auteurs, I think it's something to celebrate. Because there's a lot of people getting to direct films now who really shouldn't be directing films. I mean, I like James Gunn, but he's not the director and writer everyone says he is. His films are very, very similar. Now, I'm not saying those films shouldn't be there, but I think he's being held up a bit too high for my liking. Taika Waititi did a half-decent Thor movie, which wasn't difficult considering the first two that we got. And now he's getting every project under the sun. Is he really a good director? Is he on the level of Zack Snyder, Todd Phillips? No, he's not. Denis Villeneuve. Of course Taika Waititi isn't on that level, but he's getting the work. And I mean, and he's allegedly having threesomes with his staff. I mean, would anyone else be getting away with it? That's when you know someone is truly connected and they're only getting job after job because of their DNA. And that's interesting as well, isn't it? But these people, these directors of today, a lot of them are overrated. But your directors like Denis Villeneuve, Matt Reeves, even a director like Ben Affleck, who isn't really talked about as a great director, but he is. That's interesting. So there's a lot of talented people out there who are not being noticed, but they're still being able to make their stuff. And it's interesting. There's a difference between someone getting to do a movie because of their DNA or because maybe they're from a minority and in the studio want to say, oh, we bring in minorities to direct now, aren't we cool? Thank us, you should be thanking us, minorities. That's where we are with that. But there are a few good auteurs getting jobs. And I believe this whole thing started with Zack Snyder. And I think that's amazing. Because if you've never seen Man of Steel and Batman vs Superman Dawn of Justice, and you've had a bad impression of them, but you grew up on these type of films, these comic book characters, maybe you should check those films out and forget Rotten Tomatoes. Just because these films, I don't know, even I think they're rotten, still rotten on Rotten Tomatoes, but that site has to die. No one should be, that's another thing I think the movie auteur is going to do. It's going to kill Rotten Tomatoes, because a film shouldn't be about someone else's opinion. If an auteur is making it an immersive, personal experience to each audience member, then it's down to you to experience what you like and what you don't. And what a bunch of top critics who say Free Guy is better than the fucking Godfather, or Jungle Cruise or films like that are saying amazing things about these films that are half decent but nothing more, saying you can watch on a Saturday afternoon, then you have to know one thing by this time, that top critics can't be trusted. They're linked towards these studios, and you need to make your own mind up. Rotten Tomatoes has to go. We are now in the era of the movie auteur. And you know what I say? Bring it on. This has been the DCEU Daily. I'm Mick, your host with the most. Just ask your girlfriends and your wives. Like, share, subscribe. Please hit the notification bell so you never miss this perfection. And I'll see you again tomorrow with some more DCEU Daily. Until then, a very goodbye to you. And by the way, you can let me know if you like this, if you want me to do it here again. Anyway, I'll see you tomorrow.